About 1 minute.
All right, great. I think we should be just about live, Greg.
Geraldine is shout out.
The shout out. Yep.
And the stream is confirmed. We're good.
Awesome.
Yep. Joe, good to see you.
Yep.
Just got a YouTube notification, so we're in order.
30 seconds.
Paul Dunn's next week.
Yes, Paul Dunn. Whoa, that was scary. My mouse stopped moving for a second, and that's usually an indication that my computer crashed, which it did not. So, Joe, did you just have curiosity have a chance to listen to our episode with Mark Koziel last week?
I did not.
Okay, all right, no worries. I may still relate something back, but that's okay.
Yeah, if you tee it up topically, I can probably speak to it a little bit.
It's just an AI, just like similar to his thoughts on AI. If we get to it, it just would be how I would introduce the question. That's all.
Yep.
All right, coming up to showtime. Ready for your counting?
Yep, let's go.
I have a great show going in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard. Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ed Kless with my friend and co-host Ron Baker, and folks, on today's show, a very special treat. Once again, we have Joe Woodard. We're calling the show In the Octagon, our 8th interview with Joe Woodard. Welcome back to the show, Joe.
It's always good to be here. It's always good to be here with both of you.
Ron, 8 times with Joe. I mean,
I know.
He got the gold jacket at 5 times. Like, I don't know, like
I don't. He's coming up.
Must have
I
got
don't know
lost
what.
in the mail.
Yeah.
I've never seen this gold jacket.
It's a metaphor, Joe.
It's a metaphor, yeah. You get
the metaphorical jacket gone. Yes.
in the metaphorical octagon. But as always, Joe, we're really pleased to have you. The last time we actually had members of your team on, which was fantastic as well. Highly encourage people to go back and listen to that episode. That was episode 527. So thesoulofenterprise.com/527. But Joe, it's also coming up on Scaling New Heights, which we always talk about. And I have to say that for whatever reason, and I have not gotten around to reading this book, but David Allen's Getting Things Done has come across my desk no less than 4 times in the last week.
Interesting.
One of them was you, one of them was with another consultant, and then just various times. So, now it's got to be bumped up to the top of my queue, obviously. But let's first talk about this. Why should I read this book? Tell me a little bit about this and how it relates to Scaling New Heights.
Yeah, well, so the theme this year is Make It So. So we could think of no one more appropriate to come in than David Allen, given the fact that this book is an amazing, some $10 million copies worldwide, however many hundreds of languages. It's the definitive book on maximizing productivity. And though it's been around for a while, right, he's still the definitive voice. It's sort of like having Covey come when he was in his 80s, right, to come talk about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And that's he's an octogenarian. That's where he's at in his life cycle. He's in his 80s. And he's going to be coming now with all that wisdom to bring as well. The reason you should read the book, I read it about 5 times over the last 15 years. And the reason that you should read the book is because, unlike any other book on productivity, most of which actually have words like time management in their name, right? And they actually are books on task management, and they say time management. He's focused on prioritization, and he's focused on prioritization largely through elimination, which is I like to say that the road, if you're going to begin with the end in mind, the end between the beginning and the end is a road paved with no's, N-O's. How many things do you have to say no to? in order to forge out that amazing outcome of the thing you're trying to create. And so Michael Hyatt focuses a little bit on this too with his book Free to Focus. So this is not a brand new concept. Others have carried the mantle on it. But the 4 Ds of David Allen's methodology are really easy to deploy in any situation. And that's the do it, delegate it, delete it, or refer it. Actually starts with delete it. Delete it, do it, delegate it, defer it. And so I've used that methodology to maintain a zero inbox lifestyle since having read the book. So I haven't in 15 years gone to sleep with a single email in my inbox, not in 15 years. So if that doesn't intrigue the audience enough to say, okay, if you read this book, you can actually maintain zero inbox. And if people are wondering, how do you possibly accomplish that every day with consistency? What if you just cannot get to every email? Well, that's the defer it part, right? So I'm either going to delete the email, I'm going to do it, respond to the email, I'm going to delegate it, ask somebody else to respond to the email, or I'm going to defer it. But I will have done one of those 4 things with everything that hits my inbox. And email is just the most common example, but it's any input. He doesn't call them inboxes, he calls them inputs. Text, Instagram posts, direct messages on LinkedIn, emails, Slack, Microsoft Teams, your project management system. Inputs are coming at you like 5 different machines in a batting cage. And he breaks down those 4 Ds into what do you do when you defer it? So you have to categorize it, prioritize it, put it into horizons, revisit it. And my favorite quote, and then I'll just kind of take a breath because you wind me up and I'll go with David Allen. But my favorite quote from David Allen is, you should never have a thought twice unless you enjoy having that thought. Now, there's something Buddhist and Zen to that anyway, right? But you're fretting and worry and anxiety and fear and all those things that make us think that by cycling thoughts, we can change reality. But the context and I believe in all that too, by the way, clarity of mind, mind like water, he calls it in the book. But what he means specifically here is once it's captured and categorized and placed into a system that you trust and revisit regularly, you can finally clear your mind. And he said that when he used to coach executives, he would find that once they deployed the system, they would have this flood of creativity. He said some people would even get emotional and weep because finally their mind was clear. And so I deployed the methodologies, and I remember where I was. There are several times I remember where I was in life. You know, when Reagan got shot, I was in 8th grade, so that dates me. And I was sitting in class. I know where I was when Challenger exploded. I know where I was when I first had mental clarity from not carrying tasks around. And the last time I had it was before I was in high school. And it was very emotional and it was very liberating. And that's the power of this book.
Well, first quick side note is I'm horrified to learn that since I was a freshman in high school, I'm a year older than you. But okay.
But you know exactly where you were sitting in class that day.
I do. Yes, I do. I have third seat. I was in geometry class. But you know what's amazing about this concept is you're talking about it in terms of how you put it in practice with regard to your email. Well, this is also a way that people put this in place together at the highest level in their organization. I think it's Steve Jobs said, I'm most proud of what Apple hasn't done.
Yes.
Right. So that's a massive no from a strategic level. And then in the intermediate, and I'm curious if this is a tool that you guys use at Woodard, because I am not the biggest fan of the SWOT analysis. I much prefer the start, stop, continue, specifically because of the stop. Mm-hmm. And that you must stop things in order to either start or continue the others. So right. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so I'm not a fan of SWOT as it exists by itself. I create a combination of the SOAR and the SWOT, the strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And then I take the W and the T and I put them in the middle. So once I've defined my strengths, my opportunities, what are the weaknesses and threats I must address in order to create my results and my aspirations and results? So that
Yeah.
was not part of the context of your thing, but it's how I redeem SWAT, because
Sure.
SWAT by itself is not enough. But to your point, part of the weaknesses and the threats is what you have to say no to. It's the capacity weakness, because weaknesses are internal to your organization. So you have a capacity weakness that's inherent in every time you have an aspiration. And you can mitigate that weakness, address that weakness through elimination. Yes, or deferral.
Right.
And it's so interesting you mentioned Steve Jobs. I just finished reading a book. The title seems a little bit janky, but the substance is really good. It's disruption. Right, seems a little bit redundant, but the book is remarkably good, and they make sense of the title. Anyway, in the book, it talks about how Steve Jobs had the iPad, ready to go, ready to deploy, and deferred it until after the iPhone launched. So in order to accomplish what Apple needed to accomplish, they had to say no to the iPad for years. And some of us don't have the strength to do that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've been saying to no to a good version of Siri for years, and we're going to get that sometime soon. But just getting back to the email for a second, I just want to tell the story because I think it's funny. I actually had a boss who I think both of us know at Sage, and he would get so behind in his email that he would declare email amnesty.
Yes.
He said,
David Allen actually addresses that in the book.
He said, I would just delete all of my email, and then he deleted it all. And he would send out to the team. He would say, I just want to let you know, if you've been waiting on a decision from me, I've deleted all of my email. So you now need to resend me whatever it is I need to address.
And then you have to do it to all of your clients. You have to do it to all of your vendors. Yeah, you're right. It's an amnesty thing. And it's so funny that David Allen actually mentions that is the cycle for a lot of executives. About once every year or 18 months, they send that out. So,
and I think this guy was more on a 4 or 5 month basis, but that's one of the dangers of being in the middle management in a large organization. So yeah, but I think that's great, and I think I actually get like the shakes when I see somebody open up their iPhone and next to it there's like 10,000 unread email.
Yes.
Do you ever,
I don't know how they sleep at night.
It makes me start to scratch. I'm just like, I'm not like you. I don't have 0 inbox every night, but I do have less than 10. Usually that's my. And most of those are to be addressed the next morning. The next morning, exactly. But I will say, for those of you who haven't, and I actually talked through this with my wife recently, she was not aware of the feature in Outlook where you can schedule it to come back to you. The the snooze feature. Yes. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic to just put it in and say, hey,
that is a form of short-term deferral.
Exactly.
I would not say David Allen would not say it's categorized and prioritized. So be careful, but. Short-term deferral, like 24 hours, few hours. Yes, it's very
okay. All right. Well, we're coming up on our break, but the last thing I want you to know, Joe, is I'm going to be sending you an email at a half hour later each day, so I know what time you go to bed.
Just to mess with me, right?
So, but we are up against our break. Want to remind our listeners they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Actually, asktsoe@thresholdnow.com is the proper email address. We've switched it over. Want to remind our listeners that check out our website at The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. We also have our Patreon channel available at patreon.com/TSOE. We do our bonus shows there as well. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Awesome.
Good stuff, Joe.
Yeah, that was fun.
I can say it's not totally public. It was Ray Barlow.
Oh,
it's Ray.
Ray. He was email amnesty every couple of months. He's retired now, so he's permanently email amnesty.
And I loved Ray. Ray, but you did sometimes have to move things to the top of his inbox.
Maybe we can start. You can tell who's doing that, like, or who, right, by who you have to remind every so often about stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
What's that line? The servant never replies to the master until the third call or something.
Yeah.
I'm like,
But I do talk about lending intentionality to others. So if I send out an email, I put a note in. It's called a boomerang list. So
Mhm.
basically, if I send you an email, Ron, I've delegated to you a response. It's a form of delegation,
Right.
but I have to track who I've delegated things to, or I don't have mind without water. So I call that my boomerang list, and then my EA reviews my boomerang list, not me, and repings people if they haven't responded within the horizon that I've said. So I always say
Yeah.
boomerang 3 days, boomerang 2 days, and then she combs through it, and mine like water all the
There
time.
you go. Ooh, did you hear that? That was a thunderclap right but outside. So if I suddenly
I'm having
disappear,
them over my head as well, Ed, which is weird because we're not in the same part of the country.
no.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh. You
Matter of
ready,
fact,
Ron?
mine
All right,
hit,
Jordan.
and I don't know if it hit the audio, but the second you went, Joe Woodard's back, and went,
Yeah.
it was like theatrical.
All right,
Ready to begin it?
Jordan, I'm ready.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're in the Octagon again with Joe Woodard for the 8th time. And Joe, it makes me nervous anytime you referred to David Allen's book as a classic business book, and that means it's either timeless wisdom or irrelevant. So that always
We'll
makes
go
me
with
nervous.
timeless wisdom. Yes.
Okay, good. Let me jump to another book, Daniel Susskind, A World Without Work. I think I mentioned this even at Scaling, or maybe Ed did, I can't remember, but I've talked about it a lot before. In Hebrew, the word work and worship are the same. In other words, work is sacred, and it's how we serve God's other children or each other, however you want to think about it. But the world without work, I found completely unpersuasive.
Interesting.
It's warmed over. We've heard this story before. Lyndon Johnson formed a commission to study this issue. People have been predicting that work's going away. I don't buy it. I find it completely just nonsensical. And I'm a fan of Daniel Susskind, but not on this one. So I'm curious what you found.
Because I had just the
about
opposite
it.
reaction. I found it incredibly convincing and then therefore sufficiently scary. So I'd love to kind of go back and forth with you on how we had that kind of a different takeaway from it. But first, kind of speaking to that work as worship, I think that's really where I want to kind of ultimately go is and he alluded to some of this that if there is a world without work because of the rise of the machines, of course, we're talking about the author of The Future of the Professions, where he was talking about AI displacement of the professions before it was cool. And and when AI was largely, theoretical in its way it's manifesting today. Well, so now he's actually projecting in the book, spoiler alert, that there will be a world largely without work. And by the way, so does Michio Kaku in his works. They both say that this is going to happen. Gene Roddenberry predicted it in the 1960s, as we know, that the world of Star Trek is a world without commercialism and without the need to work in order to sustain your life. So it's a world of scientific exploration and artistry. And that's what compels people forward. So it's awfully idealistic, right? So work as worship is ultimately, I think, where a world without work is going to go. Therefore, I think it will be a world with work, but work where is defined in the service of humanity or in the service of God in that case. And and in that sense, I think, I like to take the Gene Roddenberry optimistic view that after a period of adjustment, possibly with even a reduction in the numbers of humanity, you're going to end up with a period of chaos and correction that will result in something that feels better than what we have today. Okay. And it's about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where shelter, food, all of that's automatically taken care of, and then you can sort of follow the hierarchy up that will become better versions of ourselves, which is maybe kind of where Gene Roddenberry kind of based his thinking. But to kind of break down the book, and then Ron, you and I could go back on how convincing we felt it to be. he does talk about sort of this rise of the machines and how we underestimate the machines. And I think at this point, not fewer people are underestimating the machines, especially when you see things like Boston Dynamics is doing with robotics. Michio Kaku said that the knowledge economy is the first one to be disrupted because that is the realm of artificial intelligence. It has that mind, if you will. And then the brain of quantum computing will come in, and that's sort of the perfect storm for the professional. But then Michio Kaku would say the jobs that will stay around the longest are the ones that require the blue collar jobs that require physicality to them, repairing your HVAC machine or mowing your lawn or whatever. And then I see what's happening with robotics, and I see companies like Tesla who are prepared as others probably innovate ahead of them to offer robotics at scale. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well, my air conditioning can be fixed by a robot that shows up. That's not an unforeseeable future in 20 years. So Daniel Susskind is arguing don't underestimate the machines in both their mind or in their function. And then the other thing he said, this was where we can really have a conversation. He's not a big believer in what's called the containment view. The containment view says that new jobs will emerge to replace those lost to automation. Now, that has been the case for the last 50 years. I think that you all are fond of saying, and it's come up on this show before, we've talked about it, that there was something like 55% agrarian economy in the 1950s, and it's what, 34% now.
Less.
Yeah, less. And that's a good example of, yes, but look at all the jobs that emerged that we could not have foreseen in the 1950s. Well, he hits that dead on and says that the reality of artificial intelligence as it intersects quantum computing is going to make the next 50 incomparable to the last 50. It's not even that we're going to accelerate faster, which he argues we're going to do. We're going to accelerate differently. That any job that we could possibly not foresee is predicted to be managed by AI, foreseeable or not. And so he goes with the replacement view. Technological advancements will lead to a permanent decline in the number of quality jobs. And I don't know, he sold me, Ron. Why didn't he sell you?
Because I don't buy it. We don't sit around and miss the days of, bowling pin setters or telephone operators. I mean, I love Daniel Susskind, but he can't foresee the future. Creativity and innovation always take us by surprise. Otherwise,
life always finds a way, right? That Jurassic
absolutely,
Park.
absolutely. And Daniel Susskind has no more idea of what the future brings than you or I do. What I do know is going all the way back through human history, humans have always created, strived. We're not born for comfort. This is what bugs me about the burnout theory. We're not born for comfort. We're born for challenge.
And you think if we take out Maslow's bottom layer, we suffer?
If General Motors could produce 1 million cars a year with one employee, they would. I don't think you measure an economy by the number of jobs it creates. Jobs not the purpose. Human flourishing is the purpose. And to the extent that Toyota and GM and all the others could make their cars with 2 employees, then we'd all be richer to go do something else. And I do think what does tie into this, not so much Suskind's work, but Joe Pine's work, I think moving to the transformation economy is where we're going to head next. It's not going to be about goods and services. I will concede the goods and services to the robot. Bless them. They can have it. I want the transformations because that's higher up on the value curve. And I think that's where we're heading. And I don't think an AI...
Are you back to the arts and the exploration? Because that was Gene Roddenberry's thing, is art and exploration.
Well, I think it's beyond that. I think transformations are deeply personal. The customer's the product, right? And I think we're always going to be able to provide those as human beings. There's so much work to do out there. I just don't see robots doing all of it. I can't imagine a robot coming and fixing my washing machine. Maybe it could climb the stairs.
I can absolutely imagine that. Truck pulls up, robot gets off, fixes the washing machine. I can definitely imagine that. Now we're talking 20, 30 years.
Sure. And if that happens, great. And if it can cut my hair, great. We're going to let it perform surgery? Maybe.
Well,
If
actually, I saw
there's
an
a
amazing
doctor in the room.
article on that in Popular Science today. So yeah, they're predicting again about that 20-year horizon, and nobody can see the future, but they're predicting that the machines will do surgery more accurately than a doctor. Yes.
Yeah, I believe that. I think that's very possible, but I just don't. Then the surgeon's going to go do something else. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you read these discovered drugs that we're on the threshold of this one cancer drug I just read about. I can't remember the name, but I mean, there's a lot going on that I know AI is going to accelerate and contribute to, but we're still going to need humans to come up with creative ideas. AI doesn't have a soul.
No, it does not have a soul. So you and I would agree completely that the role of souls interacting with souls in meaningful ways is still that should always be the defining quality of humanity. The question that is when, if we don't have work, what will be the way that we relate to each other? We remove the commercial construct. What is left? The spiritual, the artistic, the humanitarian, what
But
does it
Joe,
look
I don't see any evidence that work has been eliminated in any sector, that has been of consequence lately. I'm not talking about agriculture. I'm just talking about show me where jobs have been just flat out eliminated. Recently, I'm talking like the last 10 years
I don't know. Ernst and
because
Young
of
announced
AI.
in back-to-back press releases that they were laying off tens of thousands of people and that they had just brought on agentic AI. I mean, back-to-back press releases. So I don't know. Coincidence?
But we create millions of jobs a month, and we destroy millions of jobs a month. That net number you always see reported, right? That we
Right.
created 240,000 jobs this month. That's a net number. It's
Yeah.
actually 10 million jobs were destroyed, and 10.2 million jobs were created. I mean, there's churn in the economy.
We ever just start
all the time.
destroying ahead of the ability to create? And that's the argument of the book. And I agree with you completely. Daniel Susskind cannot see the future. No one can. But it's conceivable when you start talking about when you combine Michio Kaku's quantum computing book with every book you've ever read on artificial intelligence. And I just finished a eye-opening Brown University class about this too, and what's happening in the corporate world. And this whole agentic thing where agents work with agents, AI agents work with AI agents, and hundreds of them can all be doing independent tasks, collaborating together now. And then you add Boston Dynamics machines. I'm just saying it doesn't feel like it's hundreds of years off. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And look, I heard your show on the Brown course that you took with Heather, and that was great. But we're just going to find other things to do, I think. I have no doubt.
And I couldn't
just
agree
don't.
with you more, Ron. I just think those things are not going to be defined as work as we see it today. I think it's going to be work as you defined it at the beginning of the conversation. That it's some form of worship, however you would define that as the elevation of the human experience or the delight or celebration of God. I'm right there with Gene Roddenberry. I think we're going to become better versions of humanity. But even he predicted a dark time before the light time. There was the eugenic wars and all these other things that were part of that Star Trek canon. So in as much as he was able to see so many things in the future, flip phones and everything else he saw that no one could see, he did see a period of global war before as a reset. And I'm afraid that's going to be our next century, somewhere in there. It's going to be a massive reset period.
Well, I remain optimistic. I mean, we're an amazingly adaptive species, and we will adapt to whatever, and we'll find ways to serve one another. I don't think we'll be sitting on a beach sipping Mai Tais.
Yeah, I don't think that either. I do think that the population is going to thin down a little bit to accommodate the less work, but I don't know how all that's going to flesh out.
That's already happening, right? With the lower birth rates around the world, except for a
Elon
few
Musk is
countries.
concerned that it's happening, and I'm like, stop. and stop personally repopulating the planet while you're at it. But
yes, with serial children from
exactly.
Yeah.
But I was like, stop, because we need fewer people, in my opinion, as the bots take over more and more work.
Wow. See, now that's interesting. Ed and I are so pro-natal. We need more people. But okay, this is going to be an interesting discussion.
You said growth for growth's sake is the philosophy of Cancer Cell. I'm quoting you. So,
but that's in a business context, not a human context.
Well, if you think of each of us as viral agents, are we multiplying just to multiply, or I don't know? Can we shrink?
The future belongs to those who show up.
Ed's having to bite his tongue. If you're watching the video,
you've got Ed riled up. So this is great, Joe. But unfortunately, we're up against a break. And folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And Ed mentioned our Patreon channel, which you can subscribe to and get bonus content at patreon.com/TSOE. And now a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Well, that was lively.
All right, Ed.
It's not going to be long. It's not going to be long, Jordan. But I, as I'm sitting here, I have a page and a half of notes. So Ron, let's keep that. Let's make this a three-way conversation now. Okay. Because if I go through my thing, you're going to be like,
yeah, I think Ed's brain's going to explode if we talk. Yes.
No, this is actually really fun and important stuff.
It is.
And important stuff.
This is great. This is a lot better than talking about zero inbox.
Yes.
This is not public yet, but Daniel Susskind is going to be coming to talk about his book at Scaling New Heights. So,
is it? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's fine though. That's fine, because this actually is better. That there's a lively debate around it rather than it just sort of sitting out there in the mental sphere.
Well, Joe, we are streaming live. We did tell you that. So.
Okay. Even now, even our in-betweens?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess I just announced it.
Yep. There you go.
That's all right. That's value-added content right there.
That's right. Bring us back, Jordan.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Joe, you're wrong. We are back on the Soul of Enterprise with Joe Woodard.
Ed's head would have exploded if he didn't get Joe, you're wrong.
And look, I'm going to try to calmly build the case, but here's the way I think about it. And I think we are potentially talking about the same thing. And this is what I'd call playing tennis on two different courts, right? We may not be defining our terms the same. And as a result, we're all thinking that we're always serving aces, but there's nobody else to hit the ball back to us on the other side, right? So, because when Ron and I talk about work, what 50, 100 years ago, the jobs that are around today, they wouldn't even have been imagined as work, right? Take something as mundane as a tax advisor. 100 years ago, if somebody said, well, in the future, there's going to be guys who and gals who sit around and try to think about ways to reduce your tax burden for not just the most wealthy, but hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of people, that you said, well, that's not work. Right? They wouldn't even that perception. That's not work at all, right? And I think that's really the interesting thing. And I know we have children that are getting older. I have one that's a son now at Texas A&M, a statistics major, hopefully data science, a master's degree to follow. I know that his job does not exist yet. Right? And I'm not even talking about a company. I'm talking about, and probably the company might not even exist, but the position that he will do, the tasks that he will have to complete, I don't think have even been imagined yet. But I think they will be. And this is what Ron's point was, why I think this is so important. We are incredibly creative at figuring out ways to serve one another, and why we think the whole work worship thing is so important is we think that it has been a detriment to society that people think of as work as a negative thing. Mm-hmm. When work needs to be considered, the way that you serve others, and I've said this to my kids, how is it that you make money? And notice the word make money, not get money, right? It's make money. In other words, it's an act of creation. And and the answer to how do I find a job is you figure out a way to serve your fellow man, right? Whatever that way is. And I think, like I said, I think we're on the same page here. I just think that what I've come to realize is we cannot possibly even fathom what this idea of work is 10, 15, and certainly not even 50 years from now. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It makes sense. And Daniel Susskind addresses that in the book.
Okay.
And he says that the past pattern of that is not a guarantee of the future. It does not necessarily indicate that the future will offer that same thing. And the reason he says the past does not determine the future in that situation is because the machines now can mimic human thought. And mimic is the key word. AI can't think, but it can mimic human thought. And I come back to the intersection of the brain it doesn't currently have, which is quantum computing, which is not just a faster chip. It's a fundamental shift in the way that the physics of the universe works as it intersects the ability of the processing power of a computer to work faster than the speed of light. It's the only thing that can move faster than the speed of light because it doesn't move at all. It exists in multiple states at the same time. And now you're going to take artificial intelligence and give it a brain that can exist in multiple states at the same time. Daniel Susskind is saying, I may not be able to conceive what the future work is, but I can conceive that it will still be done by these machines, no matter what is inconceivable.
See, and I think, honestly, and I'm going to throw out a term here, I think that's a very Marxist position.
Well, if you've ever read Susskind's books, there's a little bit of the state as our savior in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that's completely juxtaposed to his view of life. As a matter of fact, he actually gets into the fact that nation states are going to have to rescue humanity, and he kind of takes a position that they're the only ones that will be able to.
Yeah.
But it will be from that position of they're going to have to create the order, and they're going to have to create the definitions of the human interaction, which I think the three of us would disagree with. But whatever, actually, I think the key is, even though I disagree with Susskind's landing spot, that the nation states are going to end up creating the managed human experience of the future in a world without work, which is one of his landing spots. I think something is going to manage it. And I don't think that we will call it work, because I don't think we're going to reinvent the word, the three of us. I get it, what you're saying, and I agree with it about work, worship, and the root words. But the whole human race isn't going to adopt the redefinition of that work. They're going to call it something else. Whatever they call it, it will be like what we're all describing here. Something that serves humanity in a way that we're not serving each other now, or not as liberated to serve each other now. And I get back to Roddenberry. It's going to be a renaissance of the arts. It's going to be a renaissance of exploration, a renaissance of psychological health, a renaissance of, I think, of spirituality. I think it's going to come with a massive spiritual awakening. That particular viewpoint, right? I think that we're going to see some better version of humanity, but I don't think that humanity will be doing what we currently call work, and I definitely don't believe we'll be trading that work for dollars.
Maybe this again is I do agree that we're going to get wealthier, right? But wealth, the way that we understand it from George Gilder, is wealth is knowledge, right? And learning is growth. So whether or not we call it work, I'm just saying the perception of it is what's going to still be. I again go back to the tax advisor. That wouldn't have even been perceived as work. Just like you just said, I don't think we will call it work. They would have said that 100 years ago, right? The tax, that guy is not working.
We would have called that the service of your fellow human.
That's right. And I go to one of my favorite go-to stories, the safe return doubtful story, when they were exploring the South Pole, right? And you talk about an age of exploration. Isn't going exploring work? Isn't becoming an explorer work?
In the broader definition of work, yes.
Right.
That's why I don't want to get stuck on world without work means world without work and all of its potential implications and definitions.
Yeah.
He means it quite literally, that in the future, there will be a world where my work is not exchanged for the basic meeting of my needs. And that's the same thing Gene Roddenberry said. And I do think that is a future. where the technology is going to supply for that bottom line of the Maslow's hierarchy, the shelter, the food, and it's going to be in such plenty that we won't have to exchange what we are calling this work/worship for that money.
Hmm.
And I'm not a socialist. I'm also not a hyper capitalist. I think capitalism is probably the least of the evils, and because we're sort of forced to exchange things to the good of each other, but we do it at an independent, autonomous level instead of at a government dictated level, right? So this is just my point is it's the least of the two evils. I think having neither is better.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what drives capitalism is basic needs, shelter, food. Just if we can imagine for one moment a world where the machines are so powerful that no person on the planet ever has to have shelter or food. Do we get better or are we to get worse? And that's when I come back to we will get worse before we get better. Because the people that cannot handle a life without that exchange, that was the only reason they ever get out of bed or breathe or move. They don't understand worship. They're not in touch with a spiritual side or an artistic side. Their entire life has been about survival and they don't know how to exist in any other state. I think that person will have irreparable psychological and sociological harm. And I don't know how they'll respond to that harm.
Maybe there'll be a job to help them get past that.
And maybe their full-time job is to receive
and
that
perhaps
help. I don't know.
Right, and we could be and create a transformation path for them. Right, this is what we're talking about is creating these transformations and transforming these people to where their brains are transformed to this. Look, I think again, what I think we're very much on the same page about the what I call future glee. Right. I disagree that we have to go through a hard time, though. Like I disagree with that. Is it possible? Sure, it absolutely is. But I don't think it's even right now likely, nor is it without question going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I want to, I think we've talked about this idea previously, but I just want to say, and this is another thing that's in alignment with what we're just talking about. Jim Pethokoukis, when we had him on in his book called The Conservative Futurist, which is a lousy title because there's nothing conservative about it, right? It's just to have been called something futurist. But he gives a great example that I think is in alignment with what we're talking about. He says, for most of human history, there was 0.03 economic growth per year, 0.03. Then when we finally started the implementation of the agricultural revolution, the product revolution, it became 0.3. With the industrial revolution, products and services, it became 3%. And we saw that, right?
It's exponential growth. I've seen the charts. They're
right?
Yes.
But now, if we imagine that AI is going to help us get to within a relatively short period of time, let's call it 10 to 20 years, because I certainly see within 10 years there being $1 billion company that's 3 people.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I also foresee a future which, in today's economics, everybody's a millionaire. So,
yeah, well, we can do that to just move the decimal place. This is my solution to that.
I'm just saying there's so much supply of basic needs that yes, everybody.
Well, so the last point is he said, all right, so AI gets us to 30% per year economic growth, which is a doubling of the standard of living every 3 years. Mm-hmm. Right now. What's so incredible about that is if you just take that chart, all of them are orders of magnitude increases, 0.03, 0.3, 3%, 30%, yet work didn't go away.
Right. But what happens at 300%, 3,000%, 30,000%? I mean, what happens whenever what happens when, and I'm sorry to be so negative, but when the oligarchy and the political power that is no longer can control and maintain their power by depriving others or by incrementally supplying others and protecting others. Whenever you have so much food, so much shelter, so much supply, so much wealth that everybody gets it and the powers can't hide it, you end up with the end of capitalism in a good way, in a Gene Roddenberry way. But since when has anybody in that kind of power let go of it willingly? And that's why I think there's a dark time before there's a light.
Joe,
right,
I don't know if it's the end of capitalism, because if we had unlimited housing and food, we'd certainly pull the rest of humanity out of bone-crushing poverty. And I don't think that's the end of capitalism. I see it as the end of poverty.
It is the end of poverty. Yes.
They're not necessarily capital. Well, we are up against our Joe. This is so incredibly amazing.
I know we need another hour, right? Yeah.
So, but we are against up our last break. Want to remind our listeners they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. But now a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
All right. So we are still live, right?
Yes.
So I do believe it will end poverty, but I think that eventually it will, the poor will become not poor. Then I think that everyone will become wealthy. And then I think there will be such little delineation between my wants and my needs that the whole thing just evaporates.
There will always be poor as defined by the bottom 20%.
Well, relative to the top 80%, yes.
Right.
But at what point, whenever we're all millionaires, relatively speaking, does everybody just go, I don't need to work?
Right. And, and just relating this back to the theme of this entire show, the soul of enterprise, right? There will be poor always. This is our Lord, right? There will be poor always. But he wasn't necessarily talking about material poverty. And I think
you get back to where I think we're going to land.
Right.
Which is the fact that our spiritual poverty or psychological poverty, even the way that we physically deprive ourselves, all of those things are going to be our next big task to take care of. But Maslow says now we can finally take care of it because we have food, we have shelter, and we're not worried about losing our job, our house, our car, or providing for our families. So if you believe your Maslow, you believe that now all of a sudden we can embrace this next evolution.
All right, Jordan, count us back in. Let's go. This is too.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're back with Joe Woodard. Joe, I can't believe this. We were supposed to be talking about tech and process, and we're solving the world's problems. I do want to ask you, though, about this, because I know you're speaking on this at the BDO Alliance coming up about ideal client profiles. And let me go upstream just for a minute and say, I believe ideal clients aren't ideal because of their industry or some other characteristic. I think they're ideal because of how they think. And I'm interested in your take on what makes an ideal client.
Yep. So first, how much time do I have on this segment?
9 minutes.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, so I can encapsulate it. I want to start out by answering your question in the negative. Why is it so important to have the ideal client? And if you look, and you can go out to Woodard.com, click on the ideal practice model, pick if you're a CPA firm or a bookkeeping practice, and you can look at the 7 ideals. The 7 ideals are the same, but they're laid out differently for the different firm structures. If you look at all of the other 6 ideals, ideal client is one of them. If you look at ideal brand, ideal technology, process, engagements, team, all of them, technology, they all break if you have the wrong client, because the wrong client will resist the technology, run off the team, hurt your brand, not embrace your process, stretch the boundaries of your engagements, and push. So I like to say, if I'm selling my house, or buying a house, it's location. And if I'm running a professional service firm, it's client. I mean, those are the 3 things that matter, are the client, and the client. Then you can build an ideal practice once you have that. All right. So now to answer your question directly in the positive, I agree with you that niche is not the defining characteristic of, hey, we service nonprofits. All nonprofits are ideal clients. I do believe niche has a power. It has a branding power. It has a process power. It has a technology power. It has a team power. But that within that niche, if you go in that direction, and that's an if you go in the direction, then you have to find your ideal clients within the nonprofits and within the manufacturing or whatever your niche is. And then, because we don't say niche down here in the South, We say niche, right? But there are the two pronunciations. I like to say with some service lines, even transformative ones, there are riches in the niches, yes. But with some of that work, even transformative work, there are leashes in the niches, right? So you can hurt yourself by limiting certain kinds of work to certain kinds of industry. And I break that down in the presentation I'm going to be giving at BDO Alliance, where I will say if you are protecting a client's journey, I'm all about transformation, by the way, absolutely. But back to I'm stuck on Maslow for a minute. I've got to protect the client's journey, stop the bleed, take care of the core needs of the business, and then I can start talking about elevating them upward, right? So if I'm protecting a client's journey, that's still a tremendous value add, right? I'm reducing spend with spend management, risk of fraud. I'm bringing them into regulatory compliance. I'm helping them to focus on their vision, their mission, their purpose. I'm helping them to sleep at night, giving them peace of mind. A lot of amazing value in client journey protection. But if I'm doing regulatory compliance on sales tax or payroll, and I'm doing it for industry A versus industry B, why limit it by industry? It's focused more on the nature of the work, not the recipient of the work defined by the niche is service, the niche is not industry. Okay, on the other side of the fence, if I'm doing business strategy, fractional CFO, financial planning and analysis, key performance indicators, working with the client on that, I need to understand their business model really well. And back to your first do no harm you talk about all the time, Ron, I can do a lot of harm if I try to help a restaurant and I don't understand overpouring at their bar and table turns. I have no business trying to help them with business strategy, not understanding those things. And the same could be said, I could give examples in every industry. So riches in the niches because I have to laser focus that expertise. And then you can deal with all the branding implications of where you go with that later and if the branding power tips you in one way or the other. So ideal client could vary depending on the service arm, in which service and where they skew to the service arms. But ideal client is more than just who's a good recipient of my service, controllership, FP&A, so forth. It's also the culture of the client, the respect that the client has for the work I do and for the people that I have doing that work. And back to the broader definition of work, I'm not just grudging through things like a utility. I am working in the sense we've been talking about this whole episode to the betterment of the client, worshiping, doing all things for the glory of God is the way a Christian would say it, right? Worshiping God even through my work. Can I really do that with a toxic client that doesn't respect me, doesn't respect the boundaries of the relationship? I mean, it's interdependence is two happy, healthy, whole, interdependent people, says Covey, being more than the sum of our parts. You can't do that when you're in a toxic relationship. You devolve into codependency, which is fueled by enablement. And anybody who's had an addictive personality in their life will tell you that's where it goes. So that was a lot, but
Oh, it was great.
that's how we define ideal client.
So let me tackle two topics that I think are very, very interrelated. You talk about engagement handling and boundaries, and then pricing tiers by not the scope of work, but the nature of the work, which I think is brilliant, by the way. I absolutely love that. I'm totally on board with that. The engagement handling and boundaries, though, scope creep. Let's take scope creep. Scope creep to me is a symptom. And the real disease is unclear value, unclear focus, and unclear due care.
And,
that we
and
shouldn't
wrong
be
price, too low price at the beginning, so you don't have the price capacity to service the client well.
That's right. And due care, meaning you don't have the competency to do what the client's asking of you.
Back to helping the restaurant when you don't understand table turns.
Exactly. Yes. And here's the interesting thing, Joe. Doctors don't suffer from this.
No, they don't. They're quick to go, I'm referring you to this person.
That's right. And the reason they don't is because a doctor is defined by what they don't do.
Bingo. That's kind of bookends for the episode too, because personal productivity and productivity is largely what you don't do. But I love, and I use this example all the time, that I went to my dentist and they can put on a crown, they can clean the teeth, they can do the fillings. But when I needed to have a wisdom tooth extracted, some dentists will do that. But they referred me to someone in their network, someone with whom they were networked. They didn't say go out shopping for someone. They said call this person. This person knew exactly how the other person worked, and they each stayed in their swim lanes, right? And so I think that we could have a little bit more narrow swim lanes and be more expert at what we do. And that's why I define the swim lanes by nature. I don't even like to call them tiers. I've started calling them swim lanes.
And I like that too. So let me ask you this, just going back to the riches are in the niches. With the tiers by nature, do you advise, at least long term, that they actually just offer one type of nature, like just CFO work, rather than having all three?
No, I think you've got to be holistic, and I know that's or having tight network like my dentist did, because because the problem is unless you're controlling the inputs, the nature of the books, the quality of the bookkeeping, or the regulatory compliance, the CFO is going to end up constantly inheriting a mess and giving wrong information or not being able to help the patient. It's metaphorically speaking. So yes, they can do just CFO, but only if they're tightly networked with a network of other professionals they know and trust to steward the client through the other swim lanes. What I have found is those networks, though they exist in plenty in the medical world, don't in the accounting world. And we kind of have to have the multiple departments in one firm to control the quality. I wish it were not that way, but that's what I'm finding is largely the case.
Awesome. Joe, tell us about Scaling New Heights coming up in June.
Yeah, so this is going to be our 17th year, our 17th conference. And it's good, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, it's all about making it so, actually creating these realities in your life. We have David Allen coming, but also Shantae Lowe, who I've not mentioned, an Olympian who competed in the Olympics while suffering from breast cancer. Wow. So if you have excuses that you give yourself for why you don't become the best version of yourself, she will knock those excuses right off the table on Sunday night.
That's fantastic. Was she at Scaling before?
No.
No. Okay.
We've had Olympians before, but not her.
Not her. Okay. Okay. Maybe that's where I was confusing. That sounds awesome. This is great. Thanks again, Joe, for coming back for the 8th time. Really appreciate it. Love our discussions. Geez, they go way too fast. Ed, what's coming up next week?
Well, next week, Ron, we're going to right or wrong, and for the first time, have on the show Paul Dunn, because we are not done with Dunn.
Yeah, awesome. I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Sage. No, sponsored by Woodard. What is my brain going? Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Visit us next week on the web at www.thesoulofenterprise.com. Next week, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. But as always, we love to see you out on the web at thesoulofenterprise.com. That was brain distillation.
Well, I think we fried your brain.
We did fry my brain.
All
right. Thank you, Jordan.
Hope you all have a great weekend.
All right. You too.
This was probably the most fun I've had.
Wow. That was a blast.
It was.
That was a great discussion.
What I like about us is we're not afraid to go disagree with each other and make it real. And
hey, that's where you learn the most, right? From the folks you disagree with.
No, I don't know if you saw me, but you're going. I'm putting my head down. I'm going. I've got to ponder that, because there's no way I can respond to that with what you were talking about. A lot of this stuff is I've got to think about it for a while.
Yes,
right?
The same goes, by the way, from your side of it. I've got to go
Yeah.
up and ponder this. I'm actually going to reread the book with the lens of what you both have said, and pressure test it a little bit. But you're right. That's what makes us all sharper.
Yeah.
Because I want to argue with the best ideas, not
Oh yes.
not the caricatures.
Oh, absolutely. And I will agree with you. Are we still live?
And we are still streaming.
Okay.
Yes,
We're still streaming. Okay. But I'll say this. I don't care if we're streaming. That Suskind's landing spot. I said this in the live episode.
Yeah.
Suskind's landing spot of it's going to take nation states in order to solve the problem. I do believe that this work as worship, this once we get this basic need set taken care of, I think we will evolve into something that self-regulates. Humanity will self-regulate, self-treat, self-transform. I absolutely do believe that. And I do believe that we are going to end up in more of a renaissance period, not in a period where we have to be shepherded by the powers that be, you know.
So I've thought about that. I think we're going to see the devolution of the nation state. I see it.
I agree.
We need to go back more to like a city state type situation. And I even had this conversation with some people on Facebook. I know it's drivel, but I try to keep it at least relevant. I see hopefully a peaceful dissolution of the United States, and as we know it. I think that there will be certain things that are kept, but
become a province of Canada.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I think ironically, what we need to keep is the free trade zone piece of it.
Yes. Well, see,
Right?
I think that's actually going to flip the other way. I think instead of it going smaller, I think it's going to go bigger. Because if you think about what largely separates the nation states now, it's haves and have-nots. Countries have, this country does not have. That's the whole tariff war we're going through right now. Once all people have all things in the same quantities, because technology is leveling that whole playing field, the only thing else to go to war about is religion. And we do that as a human race, but we're not going to go to war for our needs anymore.
Right. Or
Joe,
maybe territory.
Yeah. Joe, have you ever listened to our episodes with Magat Wade? Does that name ring a bell?
No.
Okay. So Magat she's been on what, 3 times, Ron? Twice? Maybe at least twice.
Twice.
Just all right. So she is from Senegal originally. And this woman is a spitfire. I mean, she is.
She'd be a great scaling.
Oh my God!
Well, we actually are looking for
phenomenal.
the second one now that I've announced the first one to this.
Well, and I was, by the way, I think we can probably snip that so that only the people who are seeing it live, which was at this point, because we just started doing this, about 4 people, maybe.
So let's do snippet. But
Yeah.
but yes, I'm looking for a second person. So if you have a recommendation.
And her personal goal is to create the first top 100 brand that emerges out of Africa.
Oh,
Because there is not a top 100 brand in Africa now.
Yep.
And that is her goal. And she goes toe to toe with government officials, the UN. I mean, because she's like, yeah, because you know what? Africa leads the world in, you know what it exports? Regulation. That's the reason why we don't have a business, because we can't get anything done. And she tells the story on the last episode that she was on of trying to get this business going. You would not believe what you have to do to start a business in Africa.
2 years to get a license.
2 years. What we can do in literally 10 minutes online.
Right. Yep.
2 years.
Yep.
She wrote a book, Joe, called The Heart of a Cheetah. And the cheetah, it was what her mentor, some economist, I forget his name, he called the younger people in Africa the cheetah nation, because they're going to be the ones that bring it to prosperity and, entrepreneurialism and really grow it and get out of poverty. And boy, is she leading the way. She's a force of nature.
Okay, I definitely want to meet this person and talk to them about scaling new heights, because now I know that there are a few people watching here. I'm not going to say what the theme is, but yes, she would be a nice fit for this. And just while we're kind of shooting the bull here, I've got about 5 more minutes, and then we're doing something special with my daughter. I was surprised when I went to Italy how heavily regulated it was too. And there was the tour guide that was walking us around, said that he was only allowed to do food tours, that he wasn't allowed to do any tour of anything other than food. That was a completely different regulatory process.
Wow.
So he would tell us about the buildings that were behind, but he said if we tell on him, he could get in big trouble because he was only supposed to take us from restaurant to restaurant.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, all right, at some point, once you start, So, but I don't know. I don't know how that. I've never studied Italian economics to know how that's affecting their economic state. I know that they're more wealthy than they have the olive exports, tourism, and so forth. But my point is, yes, regulation definitely can get out of control.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
that's why I think where Susskind loses it a little bit too, because he thinks it's the state that's going to be putting these regulations and keeping everything in check. It can't possibly do it. I mean, even with quantum computing, I mean, is it Hayek, Ron? The knowledge problem?
Yeah.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
I mean, you can't. Even with quantum computing, you cannot possibly make the calculations
Because value is subjective.
Yeah.
Value subjective.
Yeah.
And so I agreed with everything about what Daniel Susskind said up to that point. Because I was thinking and maybe it was because that was the only sort of I guess savior that he could see as solving the problem. And I guess that's really anybody who takes a position of socialism or communism is they might take the same least of all evils thing of, okay, the only ones with the power to actually end poverty are the nation states. But we've always seen where that goes, that life finds a way. Humans are not going to be caged by regulation or surveillance or monitoring. George Orwell taught us all that too. That's a pervasive story. So they cannot control the human spirit. They cannot control the human mind. And they are the worst people to do it if they could, right? So,
And we've seen how many times, governments take a ball peen to the crotch of themselves. I mean,
Yes.
look what Europe did with energy. I mean, Germany got rid of its nuclear power plants, and now it's bringing coal online.
yeah,
Hello?
right. But I do think there will be, I think it's going to end up coming from the bottom up. I think that we're going to do a renaissance, a true renaissance. And I think it will be unlike the last renaissance, which was largely under the stewardship of the wealthy and concentrated around a few. I think this one will be more ubiquitous, more shared.
Widespread.
Yeah.
Yep.
Things like blockchain are going to allow us to protect those properties and get credit for things without publishers and the Medici family sitting in the middle. The Medici family sitting in the middle, we can just disseminate that art. Completely idealistic about the end game. Yeah.
And you know what? I already think we're in a renaissance. I really do. You look around at the material prosperity. If you could have the wealthiest person in the world, Carnegie, whoever it was, would you take his wealth? Would you want to live even in 1950? Forget about 1900. Would you want Carnegie's wealth in 1950? Most people would say no.
I would take my life over that life in 1950.
Absolutely. And that's just 75 years.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'd say the Renaissance is kind of already here.
Yes. That's a great way of looking at it. Absolutely. Maybe we're seeing the birth pangs of this new thing. But with that, I'm going to close it out. This has been the most fun I've had with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was awesome.
Right.
That was awesome.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
All right. Hey, Greg.
I have a bone to pick with Greg.
Oh,
I don't even know where to start with that. Joe Woodard is an amazing human being. He won't hear this. That's fine. He can take the compliment without knowing that I said it.
So,
And no, he is. He's one of the smartest guys out there. I mean, he's incredible. You can talk to him about anything. And
he referenced several times a world without work, which is a part of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek universe, where you are compensated more or less based on your achievements and ability, not on your ability to make money. Right? That's an amazing reference. You guys also during the interview with Joe referenced the top 10 jobs not in existence 20 years ago. I looked that up.
oh, okay.
Turns out I've held 4 of them.
See?
Which is great.
Webmaster.
So I tell my kids all the time, like, you don't know what your job is going to be. Figure it out. Be a lifelong learner, and you'll be okay. But with that being said, amazing episode. Ron, you have a bone to pick. Go ahead.
I think your moonlighting, Greg, is a water sommelier. Did you see the article in The Economist about water say is the new luxury? And apparently in the Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, 1,100 bottles of imported water from 35 countries. It was the biggest event of its sort assembled. A bunch of these connoisseurs from Hong Kong, France, California. They paid $975 each for a weekend to talk and tastings, coordinated by Michael Maschja, who is the group's Austrian founder who lives in Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and he has created 250 water sommeliers ordained by him. Basically, I guess he certifies them. This is amazing to me.
Yeah. That's insane. To put it out there, right? Now the Somm test, the final Somm test in the wine industry is conducted in Dallas, Texas. Have you guys seen Somm or Somm 2, the documentaries?
No.
No.
So good. So good, right? Somm is about the sommelier test and ultimately conducted in Dallas, Texas. The documentary takes you as far as the room where it happens, right? And no further. You're not allowed in the room. Like the documentary, the filming stops at that point, right? So I don't doubt that there is a Somm for water because there is a movie called Spaceballs. And in that movie, they have Perry Air, right? So, I mean, we're already living in a ridiculous environment. That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, there's your renaissance as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's this Fromen water that's 15,000-year-old ice age water from what is now the Czech Republic. Floating in it are flakes of gold. And one of the things The Economist mentions is, the young don't buy booze anymore. They're not drinking.
Yeah.
So the water is the new chic thing.
That's actually a genuinely big deal. I don't know if your audience has picked up on this. The rate of alcohol consumption, not in a bad way, right? It in a totally normal way, like a social way, right? Is significantly down in the younger generations, right? I have, for example, 2 bottles of bourbon that arrived at my office earlier this week from a customer. It's a celebrity bourbon. I love it. I'm going to consume it. It's awesome. It's $110 a bottle. I did not, customer. So be clear, right? Given to me, but I love it. It's fantastic. And I will consume that bourbon over the course of many months. My kids cannot stand alcohol. They can't stand it. They do not want anything to do with it. And that is fascinating to me as a social experiment, right? My daughter's going to go to college next year. Ed, your son is already in college, right?
Yeah.
What do they do with their time if they're not drinking? You need to drink, make a series of bad decisions, and figure out your life.
Your decision tree has to go askew. You've got to say, well, it didn't quite work.
Right.
No, well, and my son drinks milk and water.
Wow.
That's it.
That's it.
Like he doesn't. I don't think if he's had soda, it was by mistake. He doesn't drink coffee, iced tea, nothing. My daughter will have she's got a little bit of a sweet tooth. She'll have the occasional Sprite. But yeah, it's just crazy. And I'm just thinking, my God, when I got to college, night one, there was a kegger in the dorm.
Even in France, the wine consumption is way down. It's amazing.
Good, more French wine for us.
No, the alternative to the conversation is that the consumption of gummies is way up. Right? Yeah. Or I don't know that it is, but I assume that it is. I genuinely don't know. I have no idea, but I would assume that people are supplementing or substituting, the better word, right, their consumption of alcohol for something else, which in this case is THC, microdosing, you name it, right?
So I just put it in the chat. I will put it in the show notes for those listening in. This is I had to do some more research right after I read this thing. So this is the place where you can go for the online water store, purveyors of imported and domestic fine bottled water. SalaciousDrinks.com. You cannot buy, Ron, that one from Finland in the United States.
You have to subscribe to it.
Yeah, well, you have to. No, you can't even get it in the United States at all.
At all, okay.
At all. But
right.
This place, if you notice, you can go in. They have subscription service. Like this is it's curated boxes, cases, all bottles, carbonated merch. This is exactly like a wine club. Exactly.
I love the one that comes from South Africa, where it's got a barcode on the bottle that you scan. And then you can listen to water trickling at its source while you're sipping the water. That's brilliant.
That's experience economy plus.
Yes, Joe Pine would be proud.
Well, so yes, but the Fine Water Society is listed on this page. And they have their specialized connoisseur water bottles and glasses that you have to, this. I mean, it's over the top. Over the top.
I would like the 3 bays carbonated unique water, 2,000 years in the making.
Yeah.
Deep below the picturesque Mornington Peninsula at the base of the world's oldest continent in Australia. And I'm not going to read the rest. That's how they describe this. And this is sommelier at the water level. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But all right, Greg, do you remember the Penn and Teller show Bullshit?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you remember the episode on the water sommelier?
Yeah, they said we created the first. I think they used the term steward, but the world's first water steward. And he brings out all these. Oh God, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Of course, they were filling the bottle of water from the hose outside the restaurant.
The same funky hose.
and then pouring it. People were testing it, swinging it, and go. But this is, yeah. But my favorite part of the story in The Economist, Ron, was when the guy says, "I don't bring wine to wine parties anymore. I bring this bottle of this 13,000-year-old water to." And people don't drink wine anymore. It's like,
yeah.
Like, good. I'll drink the wine. Move over. It's okay.
The other item you guys talked, you swerved into this topic of birth rates across the world during the show with Joe. And again, the show with Joe was unbelievable. I have nothing to add. Nothing. I'm not that smart, right? And Joe would argue with me that I am that smart because he's a kind human being. I'm not that smart, right? So during the show, you swerved into the idea of birth rates. And it's fascinating to me that 50% of the citizens in China are over 55. Half the country is over 55 years old.
Yeah.
South Korea is similar. Germany is similar. Italy is similar. Canada was similar until they opened up their immigration policy. And as a result of opening up their immigration policy, they effectively short-term solved their birth rate problem, but they created a housing crisis because the people that wanted to immigrate to Canada had a lot of money. And when you have a lot of money in cash, you can afford a house, which is why the housing problem in Canada is so extreme right now, because the housing prices are so high, because immigrants can afford a lot in terms of houses from a cash perspective, right? So there's no easy way out of this other than to say China, South Korea, Italy, Germany, there are a number of countries are in a a problem. They have a pickle. There's a pickle, and that pickle is demographics, because their population is aging far more quickly than their replacement rate is able to replace it. And I don't know that we've recognized as a society that that's a problem right now. It's an enormous problem, but I don't think we're talking about it enough right now.
Elon has.
You know, I used
Well,
to get an
yeah, because
argument.
he has 12 kids, and he pays
That we
attention
know
to
about.
none of them,
And
apparently.
what, 10 mothers or something or whatever.
So,
I
and
know
he's being
South Korea
sued for not paying attention. Sure.
is like at 0.7 or something,
Mhm.
0.75
Yeah.
fertility. I mean, it's amazing. And I
which
used to get
to define is for every person that dies, 0.75 people are replaced. That's not sustainable. And the way that Peter Zion, a geopolitical analyst, describes this is that when you move from an agrarian economy and you industrialize, right? In an agrarian economy, kids are free labor.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of kids. You move to an industrialized society, kids are expensive. Right? That costs a lot of money. You got to send them to school, you got to send them to college, right? So you have fewer children, and that birth rate falls as you industrialize.
Yeah.
And different countries across the world have industrialized at different points in time.
capitalism is the greatest birth control, except the anomaly is Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They have both flourishing economy and an unbelievably
high
high
birth rate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I used to get in arguments with Paul O'Byrne about this, Ed. He used to believe fewer's better. Like Joe said, we need fewer people. And people are the ultimate resource. What are you talking about? But, you know, some people, I guess.
Brains.
Brains.
The human brain is the human brain is the ultimate resource.
And we I think we've asked almost every economist that's been on the show, what do you see happening when we have a declining birth rate? I mean, we don't have any empirical evidence for this because it's never happened throughout history.
Well, for a sustained period of time,
right? We've had the plague and things like that.
Right.
And people will argue, well, it drove up wages because, you know, it lessened the labor. But give me a break. It's like saying the war got us out of the depression. No, you don't get out of depression by killing people.
Yeah.
That's a pretty extreme view.
Yep. Greg, I don't know how much time do you have? Because I've got one more I just wanted you to be a part of here.
And
so this
I'm an exceptionally busy person. Probably busier
no,
than
but you
anyone
have kids stuff. I'm talking your kids stuff that you've got to do usually. So
Thank you for being kind. Yes, let's go.
All right. So this is what are the greatest karaoke songs of all time? A statistical analysis.
Oh my God.
Oh my
All right.
God. I don't
The
even know where to
morning
start.
after.
Yeah. So
many songs. Yeah.
Well, I was very disappointed by this article, at least by the ones that have come through, because the way that they did this is by monthly Google searches for music related topics where it was artist name and or song name and karaoke. Right. So that's the way that they broke this down. So the top 10 songs in reverse order. Number 10, Bon Jovi, "Living on a Prayer."
Should be number one. Okay.
But I'm going to tell you from now on in, it's not. It's all chick songs. Yes, it's all chick songs, even all the way to the top. So, right. So number 9, Sia, "Chandelier."
All right.
Number 8, Vanessa Carlton, "1,000 Miles."
Okay.
Next up, Lady Gaga, "Bad Romance."
Yes.
Right. Britney Spears, "Hit Me Baby One More Time."
Travis does a better version, but I'll give it to Britney. Sure.
Okay. 5, Spice Girls, "Wannabe."
God.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Yep. The number 4, Britney Spears, "Oops, I Did It Again."
Yes.
Totally singable. Come on.
Okay. 3, Whitney Houston, "I Want to Dance with Somebody."
Oh, I want to dance with somebody. Oh, I want to feel the heat with somebody. Come on.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Alicia Keys, "If I Ain't Got You."
Yes. She's
All right.
amazing. Yeah.
Alicia Keys is great. Don't get me wrong. But the number 1 karaoke song, Backstreet Boys, "I Want It That Way."
Oh my God.
I have a real problem with that, but I know it's true. And the fact that I know it's true makes me want to hurt myself with like a fork in the eye.
You're going to go cutting tonight. You're gonna
Yeah. You know, those songs make a lot of sense because
They do make a lot of sense, but they're disappointing.
Yeah. because easily like there should be some stuff in there by Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, but they didn't have a lot of lyrics. They're not known for their lyrical genius, right?
But when we have talked about half Three Sheets to the Wind in a karaoke bar one night, Mac the Knife, Bobby Darin, how can
or something from Sinatra?
My Way.
Martin,
I mean, the Suspicious Minds, but by Elvis. Come on.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Barbie Darin is a second cousin of the Antilli family, which is my mom's maiden name.
No, I'm
just
well aware.
throwing
That's
it
what
out
we.
there,
Yeah. Because I think that we started the conversation by me saying the coolest human being ever to exist was Bobby Darin.
Yeah. And by the way, Ron, this is Ed and I having way too much to drink in Old Town Alexandria, Washington. Cool. With John Shaver, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, was Shaver there with us that night? Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, a Sinatra, a Bobby Darin. I mean, take your pick of the Rat Pack. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic lyricists. The modern day version, though, I can't. Other than Backstreet Boys, I can't argue with any of those. They've got that earworm quality to them.
They do.
You don't want them to be great, but they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I would have never guessed Britney would have two songs in that list. I would have never thought that.
I mean, she has great producers. Producers.
I was and no Tay-Tay.
Yeah.
Zero Tay-Tay.
Yeah. You know what I find about Taylor Swift songs is that they're not earworm songs. They really speak to my daughter. She loves Taylor Swift. We've talked about this before. She had a ticket to see the show. She went. I offered her $1,000 to not go because that's what we could have sold it on the open market, right? To have a weird old man like me sit next to her friends, right? She's got great songs. She's got great lyrics, but the earworm quality, the pop song quality just isn't quite there, and that's not a bad thing, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, Shake It Off is probably the only one that really attained kind of that status, but but again, hard to do karaoke, I guess. That's what the downside of that is. But
unless you ask The Rock. And he's done, there was that show, I think it was like lip sync karaoke, and The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson did Shake It Off. It's an amazing performance. Go look it up. To see that big, I don't know what he is, 6'4", 320-pound guy go, shake it,
doing that,
Shake It Off. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. I thought that was pretty interesting piece. So.
That's amazing, Ed. Thank you.
Greg, did you see any of the South Park episodes where I think it's Stan's dad, the geologist? He plays Lord, the singer, and he's a sensation among the teen. Oh, it's friggin' hilarious.
Yeah. Ed, go look it up.
It's hysterical.
By the way, I bought my brother-in-law, who does not listen, I don't think, to Overtime, some Casa Bonita swag, right? So a hot sauce and a few other things. And by the way, gentlemen, because, and I don't know how this happened, I was one of the first of 5,000 individuals to put my name on their email list for the reopening of Casa Bonita. And in the near future, in front of this camera, I will be able to show you the Founders Club member card.
Yes.
Offered to me. I'm getting one.
You're getting one.
I'm getting one. Yes.
I think my dad's getting one. He sent me the email about it. I'm like, how the hell did you get this? But he signed up around the same time you did, Greg, because he heard us talking about it.
Yep. So tell your dad that both of us are getting a Founders Club card.
Oh.
Like a physical credit card that says I am one of the first 5,000, and we get early access to reservations. If I ever want to go to eat in a crappy Mexican restaurant in Denver, not even Denver, Lakeland, right?
Lakewood or whatever.
Yeah, I'm in.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
Wow.
It's a big deal between me and your dad. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Sam and Greg off to the. Maybe the two of you should go together. You get like a special booth or something, Like, by the diving board.
Well, you know who wants to
the
go,
cliff
I think, more than anybody is Josh. I couldn't believe what a huge South Park fan he was.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing stopping us, so let's go. We've talked it over ad nauseum during the bonus episodes. Let's do it.
There we go.
We should do it.
So the final thing I have to say is that all of this discussion about AI, the ability to help us do our jobs better, Gene Roddenberry, referenced several times by Joe Woodard during the show today, has an ideal version of what the world looks like, right? You are compensated based on your ability and nothing else. You don't make money, right? That's not a thing in the Star Trek world, and it's a wonderful thing to aspire to. I really love it, right? But this world without work continues to be something that billionaires today put forward, right? Billionaires say when AI hits, the world will not need to work. We've heard this before, right? You won't have to work. Bill Gates was one of the first in my lifetime that said it, right? You will not have to work 5 days a week. It'll be 3 days. You'll have more weekend time than you have work time. This has never happened. It has never happened. It never will happen in our lifetime. I don't want to say ever. That's a strong term.
Ever is a long thing, I guess. Yeah, but
it's never happened in our lifetime. It will not happen in our lifetime. A world without work is a wonderful thing when you are compensated based on your abilities to achieve and not your ability to make money, right? And
no,
wait,
stop.
Go. I'm opening this up for you and Ron to talk.
Say that again. It will be great when we are compensated on what?
Our ability to achieve.
Achieve what?
Achieve greatness. Achieve academic abilities. Achieve something beyond what.
For what purpose?
Well, that's the point. That this is where the libertarian mindset runs into conflict. For no purpose.
No, it's not. It is for purpose. It's not. No. See, that's the thing. It's not for no purpose. I know you.
It's for creation.
It's for It's for the betterment of human flourishing.
There you go.
Well, yeah.
If it's not going to be the betterment of human flourishing, it's not going to be. It's not a long term. Not a value. Okay, so yeah, I guess we can do studies on feminist art of the 1920s. I guess. I mean but if you want to do that, great. But okay, is that not work? I guess. I don't know. Right. I mean, because in which case we can take the 80% of people who are research fellows at most universities and say they're not working because the shit they're producing is not even replicable.
Well, even Roddenberry himself was creating and working and serving his readers
and viewers. And I think that's the misunderstanding. I think the misunderstanding is it's the negative connotation of the word work. And I meant to say that to Joe because I had a note on that and I missed it. But then there is a negative connotation in the word work. Oh, I got to go to work. Yeah. Right. That's the problem.
Yeah. And the bifurcation of like life and work are separate.
Yeah.
And that's a false.
Yeah, they're not for me, which is interesting. But I recognize the position of privilege from which I speak. Right, work and life are not different. And I know that people would argue with that, and that's fine. That's totally fine, right? But for me, it's all the same. I love what I do. I do what I do because I love it. Therefore, I do more of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true of a lot of people. I even think that's true of people who are immigrants, legal or otherwise, in the United States, who come and do and work outside, landscaping, whatever. Right? They're doing it to feed their families, no doubt, but they're doing it also because out of a sense of I'm productive here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm making a difference for somebody.
I did have a period of time in which I sat in an office and made great money, right? I'm not going to lie. I sat in an office, made great money. No one questioned me. I didn't have to really do anything, right?
And you
I
were
hit year
miserable.
3, year 4 in this role and recognized that I could make a 6-figure salary for the next 7 years and no one would question me. And I came home and I talked to my wife and I said, I want to quit. Right? This
I think that
sucks.
happens a lot more than
Right?
we think.
This
Yep.
sucks. I want a challenge. This is hard. I could do this forever and I would never feel fulfilled. I would rather do something for less money and feel challenged. Now again, position of privilege, and I don't want to gloss over that, right? I totally understand that. But in this case, I looked at my role and I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this forever. I don't want to make this money. I want to do this other thing over here. And I took the challenge.
Well, it's
I don't
funny
want
to
to name
me.
companies, but Ed, you know what I'm talking about.
But like you said, Greg, billionaires say this, the end of work. But you look at these billionaires, whether it's Musk or Gates, well, I don't think Musk says it, but Gates and all these people, they haven't stopped working.
No.
They're workaholics. Musk, are you kidding me? I don't know when the guy sleeps.
No one does. He's insane. He's insane.
He is.
But that's fine, right?
But that's what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ed, I'm with you there, buddy. I really wanted to wind you up and get you going. A world without work.
There you go. Awesome. Well, you did. It's good. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. So I've got to head on out. You've got a bonus episode to do. I appreciate your time. As always, great interview with Joe is the kind of person you can wind up and let go, but the two of you had a wonderful conversation with him. And I think really kind of took him out of his comfort zone, which is great, right? Because Joe is used to the pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And he even said, like, this is not the conversation I expected. Well done, gentlemen.
Is there a possibility that you can get in and snip that section from the YouTube clip on where he makes that announcement that he was not supposed to make?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'll do it on the Patreon stream, but yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Done.
Thanks, Greg.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
You too.
All right.